planning a cruise to the Mediterranean? Are you looking at port excursions and trying to figure out which ones are worth it? In today's video, I'm going to continue my port excursion series by walking you through our all-day tour of Florence. I'm going to tell you what the tour promised, what the day was like, what we saw, what we did, what we thought, and whether or not we thought this tour was worth the money. Now, before we begin, I want to make my usual 2 disclaimers. There are many, many things to see with your day in Florence and with your day back at port. This is only a few of the things you can see, so I'm not suggesting that this is the most perfect tour and you should definitely book this one. My second disclaimer, as usual, there are other ways to see the sights beyond a ship-booked excursion. There are third-party vendors, you can go on your own, you can hire a private car. However, I booked a ship-booked excursion, so that's what I'm going to share here. So, now that the details are out of the way, let's get started. First things first, our tour was called Historical Florence and L'Accademia Gallery. Now, the L'Accademia Gallery is where the statue of David is. Of course, this statue was carved by Michaelangelo. There was no question for me that I wanted a tour to Florence that included this. This tour was booked through Royal Caribbean while I sailed Symphony of the Seas around the Western Mediterranean. This is what the tour promised. We docked in La Spezia. We were provided bus transportation from port to Florence and back. We were provided a guided tour. We would be passing several landmarks on our walking tour and on the bus. We had included tickets and timed entry to L'Accademia Gallery. We were going to have a walking tour of the city. Lunch was included with a pre-designated menu. We would have 45 minutes on our own in Florence, and we would visit the Church of Santa Croce. Now, the information included with this tour explained to us it would be all day, 10.5 hours long, and that would include about 3 hours on the bus. We were told that the level of this activity would be strenuous. We were going to walk over 2 miles on uneven surfaces. We were also told there would be a dress code in the church. No bare knees, no bare shoulders. We were warned we could not bring oversized bags with us. There was nowhere to put them, and we would not be let in with those things. We were also warned that because lunch was included with a pre-designated menu, there was not going to be room for dietary restrictions such as gluten-free, vegan, any of those kinds of things. The cost of this tour was $250 per person. Our tour left at 7:30 in the morning. We were given clear instructions on where to meet inside the ship, and once we were all gathered, we were led outside to the bus. The bus was very nice, well air-conditioned. It had an extremely tiny restroom on board, beautiful big windows, and very comfortable. We drove through the Italian countryside, and it was gorgeous, mile after mile. The bus was very comfortable. We were given our headsets, and the guide used some of this time to prepare us for what we were going to see that day. She also warned us that even though we had tickets and timed entry to the art gallery, that we needed to expect to wait outside in line for quite a while. It was very exciting to arrive in Florence and start driving through the city. Everything was so interesting and so fascinating. Our first stop was the art gallery. We could not be dropped off directly in front of the art gallery, of course, but we were dropped off fairly close, and it was about a 10 to 15 minute walk from the bus to the art gallery. The art gallery is in an area with lots of shops, cafes, gelato. It was extremely warm waiting outside in line, and it was a big crowd. Our guide told us that tickets for the art gallery are sold out well over 6 months in advance. There was a small stand nearby where you could buy bottled water. It was handy to have just a few euros with you so you didn't have to use your credit card just to buy one bottle of water. It's also a good idea to just bring your own and have it with you. We stood out in the heat for maybe 20 to 30 minutes, and then we were let inside. Now, this was the first guided tour we had taken during our whole Mediterranean cruise, and I have to say I was shocked at the crowding in the city, in the lines, the restrooms, the shops. I had never been anywhere with this much of a crowd. Everywhere you went was shoulder to shoulder. That's just to be expected, and it was that way in Rome as well. It was not possible to just walk around and look at the paintings or make your way to the statue. You had to slowly walk through the crowd at their pace and wait until you kind of got funneled to your spot in front of David for your photos and video. The David is just stunning, absolutely stunning, and well worth going to see, especially if you are interested in art or the Renaissance. We were given 2 hours in the art gallery, and that time just flew by. As I mentioned, some of that time was spent funneling your way through the crowd a little bit slowly from here to there. You would have to wait a little while to get closer to something you wanted to look at or take a picture of. Now, even though there's a lot to see in the art gallery, 2 hours was just the right amount of time. Much more than 2 hours would have been too much due to the crowds and the noise. I was able to see most of the collection, so many sculptures, so many paintings, so much history here. It's incredible. At this point, we went to lunch. We were taken to a pre-chosen cafe and given a pre-designated menu. After lunch, we were taken over to Neptune's fountain. This is a big area, wide open, surrounded by sculptures, historical buildings, as well as cafes and shops. Here we were given 45 minutes on our own. I used this time to take photos and video of the area, look in some of the gift shops, and get some gelato. Now, I will say during this break, we were highly encouraged to go inside a leather goods store and watch a demonstration on how a purse was made, and then we were offered a discount to shop inside that store. In general, it was a lot of fun to do that quick little round of shopping in Florence. They had some beautiful stores, beautiful things, as well as a mix of typical tourist items. At this point, it was time for our 45-minute walking tour of Florence. And this was very enjoyable. It's very warm out. You're going to want a sun hat and sunglasses, but this was so interesting. We walked all around the Piazza del Duomo, and we stood outside the Duomo and looked at it for quite a while she told us all kinds of information about it. Then we made our way over to the historic bridge in Florence. This is Ponte Vecchio. This has been around since the 13th century, and there have been shops on this bridge since the 13th century. It was amazing to see this in person. This was a wonderful area for shopping, just wall-to-wall boutiques and little gift shops and handmade goods. There were bakeries here, cafes, gelato, so much to see. A really fun place to spend some time. Our final stop was visiting Santa Croce. This was an incredible basilica, very historic, detailed, just amazing. So much inside to see here. We spent about 45 minutes here and it was amazing. Then it was back on the bus and a 90-minute ride back to the port. So now that I've walked you through the tour and our day in Florence, let's take a look at what we thought about the tour. Did we see everything we were promised? And did we think it was worth the price? Number 1, did we see everything we were promised? Yes, we did. And the bus was very comfortable. The tour started on time. We arrived back to the ship on time. There were no bumps or surprises or problems along the way. Number 2, was it worth the money? Absolutely. We saw so much with our one day in Florence. It was very important to me to see the David. As I mentioned, the art gallery is jam-packed, sold out, long lines, lots of people. Using this tour made the approach to the art gallery as simple as possible and seeing the David as simple as possible. I loved our walking tour around Florence and getting to know the history of all the buildings, understanding what we were seeing. Now, we probably could have done this tour less expensively with a third-party vendor. It was also an option to try to get into the city on our own. But none of that appealed to me. Florence is so far away from the port. I didn't want to take a chance with a third-party vendor that we would have an accident, a flat tire, a traffic jam, and not make it back to the port on time. I wanted that ship-booked excursion to guarantee that the ship knew where we were, they knew we were coming back. If there was a problem on the road, they would wait for us. So my final thoughts on this tour are, we have no regrets at all. We loved our day in Florence. We were stunned by the beauty, just blown away by how amazing Florence is. It is a city well worth visiting for 2, 3, 4 days if you can manage it. But if you have one day while you're in port, this was an ideal tour if seeing the David is important to you. Now, that was a big part of the day, so if seeing the David is not important to you, then this would not be the most ideal tour. We enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. Yes, it was worth every penny. I hope this video has been helpful in helping you plan your day in Rome. If you go to visit Rome for the first time, I hope you'll come back here and leave a comment, tell us all about it, whether you take this tour or something different or do Florence all by yourself. If you enjoy this video, please subscribe and hit the like button. It would help out our channel quite a bit. Happy sailing and enjoy your next cruise.